Morning, we're going to work on our slab houses today. So I decided to print out a gingerbread house version. You guys, some of you drew your own slabs. After you print them out, obviously you'll want to cut out the pieces. And I'm going to do a very small one because I'm working at home and I don't have a lot of space, but you can do one pretty much any size you like. So if you want to do a bigger one, you might have to do one that's like 2 pages long, like this one, and it even has a tree, which is kind of fun too. Okay, so if you want to print out one, if you have a printer, you can, or you can sometimes put your paper up to your screen and use a pencil and trace it if you don't want to cut out your own template for that. So I'm going to set these aside a moment and I'm going to get my clay. So when I'm working with my clay, this is pretty hard clay, but since I'm rolling slabs, it's not that big of a deal. But what I want to do is take my clay out. If you have the bigger block of clay, that half bag of clay, then you just need to cut a finger down off the top and use the bigger piece. If you have this firm block of clay from the beginning of the year, then it's the same thing, but you'll just have to cut more of them. So you want to measure a finger down and take your wire tool. You guys should have a nylon wire tool if you got one at school, otherwise a string, and cut that. And then make sure you guys are wrapping up that clay again. Don't just let it sit out because you really need it for later. So you can do the throwing of the clay method. You can watch the video on your own again if you want. I have a rolling pin. In the video last week, I showed you how you guys can use a can or something like that. It might need to, if your clay is really hard, knead it a little bit, like squish it a little bit to soften it, because it may be just so rock hard that it's hard to use. I don't recommend dropping your bag on the floor unless you've already done it, because you kind of want this sandwich bread kind of shape here to go. All right, the other thing you guys have is you have at least one stick, and I know it's hard to see, but there are rulers on here. So 1/4 inch is about the thickness of your thumb. So that's the thickness you want. You don't want it really thin or really thick, and you want all your slabs about that thickness. Now, usually we'd have 2 sticks that are 1/4 inch thick. These are way too thin. That clay will warp. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. All right, the best thing to do is to stand up when you're rolling out your clay so that you can put some weight and pressure on it. And then you do want to work on your slab mat because it will stick to your surface, and then flip it a few times. So in the video, he talked about how you want to keep it nice and flat and even. So by turning it and flipping it a few times, you're going to get your nice, flat, even slabs. So you don't want one side really thick and one side really thin, okay? You want them even. So the other method was the tossing of the slab. You can do both, actually, if you want. Once you have your slab rolled out, I would just put it in a Ziploc and get a bunch of them rolled out. So count how many pieces you need for your template. So I did this last night, and I put them in a Ziploc, and I put a piece of saran wrap between them because I was leaving them overnight. But if you're not going to leave them overnight, you don't necessarily have to put the saran wrap between them. It's like baking. Have you ever baked cookies for Christmas time? So put them in the fridge. All right, so that way they don't stick together. So you get out your slabs, and then you're going to cut out your template. Now, if I want to press texture into the piece or pieces, I would need to do that now. So you guys have a lot of different things that you could use for texture, I'm sure, in your house. And one of the things you might choose to use is just a simple fork. So if you wanted like a roof texture, I could use the end of the fork. You could kind of experiment. So this is for pressed texture. You don't have to add texture to it, but if you want a pressed texture design, you would do that when it's wet. So it's your choice if you want to add the pressed texture or just carve texture in later, or leave it smooth. Then obviously you're going to cut out all of the pieces. So this house is so little, this one says 2, right? 2, that I wouldn't need many pieces of clay. All right, and then you guys have your stick. It works much better than a knife, and you would cut out your pieces. Now this is so little that it is going to be a little bit more of a challenge to put it together when it's leather hard. So you might want to try to go a little bit bigger than something like this. Part of the reason I did it so little is so it would fit under my document camera too. And then make sure that you are taking this excess clay and balling that clay up. I usually cut into there to cut off the extra pieces. And then balling that excess clay up and putting it in your bag to be recycled. Okay, so he kept the templates between them. Sometimes that's not usually enough. So after you cut off all of your pieces, I'm just going to do a few for now and then cut them out while you guys are working. Then you guys need to get them to the leather hard stage. So the best way to get to that leather hard stage is to put them between newspaper or paper towel. So I don't have any newspaper available. So I just cut up some precious paper towel and I'm going to layer it. Okay. And then I'm going to stack, if I had the other sides, I'd stack that and then put also a layer on top. So once you've stacked all of them, make sure you also have a layer on top. So the purpose of this is to get to leather hard, but not bone dry. If this got to bone dry, then you wouldn't be able to put the pieces together and you'd have to start over. So once you have all your pieces cut out, you want to make sure that you have either newspaper or paper towel all around that. You can see on the side here. Then you would take your Ziploc and you would put it in the Ziploc and leave it overnight. That's why we needed to do this today, so that we can get them leather hard for tomorrow. If you try to put together really soft pieces of clay, they don't turn out as well. So you put it in your Ziploc, and then you can close it. You don't have to close it super tight. You can leave it open a teeny bit like that, but just have it closed. And then you're going to leave it overnight until tomorrow, and hopefully they'll be leather hard by tomorrow. So believe it or not, even wrapped in plastic, the moisture will be soaked up by this paper towel, but not so much that it goes to bone dry. So once you guys have those wrapped up in there, if you have any excess clay, I recommend that you cut out a couple extra sides or bases or roofs so that you guys have them in case something breaks or goes wrong or dries unevenly. And then you have extra clay to make your ornament or coaster, or another ornament or coaster if you need to do that, and then upload that to the Padlet. So you do need to get these rolled out and your pieces cut out and then wrapped in paper towel or newspaper and put in plastic. If you don't have a Ziploc or your pieces are too big, you can use Saran wrap or you can use the Tupperware container like you saw in the video. So that's the plan for today, is to cut out all of the templates.